Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. I'm looking today at a book which has come to us from LexisNexis. It's on mental capacity, law and practice, now in a 4th edition, and it's been written by a lot of people. I'll mention their names now. The consulting editor, who's known to many of you, is Gordon R. Ashton, OBE. The general editor is now Mr. Justice Baker, and the senior contributing editor is District Judge Marc Marin. So you have a tremendous amount of expertise just in that trio. Then the contributors are James Beck, Richard Frimston, Annabel Lee, Claire van Overdijk, Alex Ruck Keene, Dr. Lucy Series, Martin Terrell, and Adrian D. Ward, MBE. This, I think, is an important book. There are a lot of new books on the market about mental capacity. It's a difficult area. It's also an area that's got a lot of contradictions in it in terms of statutory provisions. There's never been a proper look at it by Parliament because they've been too busy on other matters, unfortunately. But it's an area that we've got to look at because 1 in 4 people have mental illness, for instance. It's now recognised, but we're now talking actually about that. We're talking about the capacity of people themselves to deal with their own affairs. I've given the title for our review this: Significant Developments Explained with the Recasting of Rules and Practice Directions. That's where we are at the moment with this, because it's a little bit like my main practice in family law, and that is that we haven't had some of the legislative changes we wanted. So what we've got instead are these practice directions to try and assist. Let's have a look at the book anyway. Nice picture of the brain and the skull there. That's the front. There's the spine. And then there's a lot of information on the back. It gives a lot of detail as to where everybody comes from. And there are obviously some quotes from leading practitioners and commentators about where we are at the moment with the subject matter. It is actually a paperback, and if I go to the back of the paperback section, you've then got the index itself, which is by paragraph numbering. Lexis very much to the fore with that. It's just under 1,000 pages long, but if I get to the front of the index, again, the pages are actually quite thin. You can see there's the index there, and then you've got after that you've got quite a lot of appendices at the back. As I say, the one thing about this book is it's actually it's a paperback, but the paper is a bit thin, so as you see, I'm going to have some problems probably opening some of the pages up. There's the front page anyway, and there is a dedication which I'll just show you there, which I think is very important to read. A lot of people are involved in these books, more than you would think. So it's always nice to have the dedications, just to give you some idea. That's the blurb about the book itself. Then there's a preface to the very first edition. This is, of course, the 4th edition, but the first edition came out a little while ago, and that was actually written by Gordon Ashton in January 2006. Then you've got the introduction. Obviously things have changed a bit since then. It's 2018. The introduction itself, as I say, the pages are quite thin. The introduction was written in July 2018 by Mr. Justice Baker, Jonathan Baker. It's well worth reading to start off, because what he's included are all of the changes that have taken place. Then you've got the list of contributors. As I said, a lot of people involved in this on both pages. Then you've got the content section as well. You can see it runs through for quite a long way, the contents section, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because the contents is actually quite detailed. There are 14 chapters, ending up with a chapter about Northern Ireland, then some appendices, in fact 3 in total. Then you've got a very useful list of abbreviations, and then after that 2 pages of abbreviations. You've then got the table of statutes. They're statutory based, of course, but you've got the statutes to lead, and then after that, let me just show you, you've got some SIs there, and then after that you've got some European legislation, always going to be there for quite a while. Then you've got the tables of cases, quite a lot involved in this. And then after that, we get, as you see, it's actually navigating the pages. I don't want to rip the book, you see, that's the point. There's chapter 1, introduction and overview. So what you've got paragraph numbering at the sides, and you've got a lot of detail all the way through. And you can see there's a certain amount of information. You do have footnoting, but it's not too heavy. Altogether, I think a very important book, and very much in the house style of LexisNexis. So in this relatively short review, what do I say? Well, this. LexisNexis are to be congratulated on producing the new 4th edition of Mental Capacity, now edited by Mr. Justice Jonathan Baker. Excuse me. And he's taken over, and it's most useful to have this expertise, because the new edition has been comprehensively revised by a team of experienced contributors to provide coverage of all the latest developments in legislation, procedure and case law. Now, they include the following, and I'm just going to list them, so depending on what you're looking for, this will give you an idea of what's actually in the book. There's the reissued Court of Protection rules, and that includes the PDs, the practice directions, which came into effect in December 2017. I'm recording this nearly a year later. The Law Commission recommendations on deprivation of liberty, DOLS, a completely new chapter on the important topic of representation and participation of P, and then an extensively updated chapter on the international protection of adults, with the addition of a new section on ordinary residents. So those are the basic 4 ingredients that you've got in the new book. Mental capacity therefore gives us, as the practitioner or the advisor or anybody who's involved in this area, an authoritative commentary which highlights areas of potential difficulty and offers practical guidance on the changes that the legislation poses. As I've said before, my biggest concern has been, and that is, I know, shared by many other people, that we have not progressed enough with the amount of reform that we need in this area of law. It's going to be some time before anything is done, but at least it's another area where we do need to start looking again at fairly substantial root and branch reforms. I'll conclude by saying it's a book which remains essential reading for all private client lawyers, chancery practitioners, non-contentious lawyers, local authorities and healthcare professionals, because I believe it's fast becoming one of the top books in what is a most important area of law. And of course the book was published in 2018. It is, as I've indicated, and I said right at the end, an important area of law. It's one, I have to say, one that's been ignored to a certain extent in the past. Not anymore, and that shows but by the fact that we're getting new editions out quite quickly from the first in 2006. So, and obviously that was part of the original legislation. There's the front cover again, there's the spine, and then there's the back. And if I just open it in the middle, you can see the detail. I'm looking at here on recognition. This is international protection of adults, recognition and enforcement. So you see the detail is very, very substantial. And I suspect if you've got a case in this area where you've got a real problem, you're trying to work out, because there may be a mixture of jurisdictions, there may be all sorts of problems. I think this book is probably a good starting off point. You may need to cross-refer obviously to PDs and various other things, and perhaps the main legislation, but I think this book will be a very good first port of call. Anyway, thank you to all concerned, especially to Mr. Ashton and Mr. Justice Baker, and of course District Judge Marc Marin, for the work with all the other people that they put into giving us what is a really good statement. Can I say finally, we actually really do thank you for this sort of document, this sort of book, because it assists us greatly with the work we actually do in the courts and advising the clients. So thank you to all concerned. Bye-bye.